Okay, so we are on the third and final part of the series on this Cayman S project. And in today's video, I'm going to go over the results from the custom front bumper wrap that we installed on this car using DYNOshield clear paint protection film. And I'm also going to be going over the application of NV wheel and NV glass. Lastly, I'm going to be doing a tutorial on NV MORPH and also a small review on the Detail Division Excel backing plate that we have here on this Rupes Mark II 21. We've really been enjoying this backing plate so far, so I wanted to go over that a little bit. But first, I'll start with the results of the bumper. Overall, it came out great. I'm really happy with the results, and I'll show you guys some of the up close details here. So you can see here, I was able to wrap between the bumper and the fender, eliminating that exposed edge. So it's really hard to tell the difference between the unwrapped fender and the wrapped bumper where it starts and finishes. I was also able to tuck this edge here underneath the headlight, which is still an exposed edge, but it's in a place that is very hard to detect unless you know exactly what you're looking for and know where it is. I was able to hand cut these holes for the headlamp washers, which I think came out great. Puts the radius of the cut right up against the edge, right there, versus having it pre-cut and having it about 1/8 of an inch out and around it. So just one less exposed edge. Here I was able to wrap between the fender and the bumper again, which is a really nice aesthetic. And as I mentioned in the last video, instead of having 3 separate pieces, I was able to do it all in one piece with some seams. Obviously, I had to make a relief cut right here by the fog light so that the film wouldn't want to pop up here. But overall, I was able to tuck underneath the fog light on the top side, the bottom side. Obviously, I wrapped here into the tow hook cover. I hand cut all the parking sensors so that it's nice and right up against the radius, just like the headlamp washers. Went into the turn signal areas here so that once we reinstall those, you won't have an exposed edge there. I was able to get the film right up against this plastic trim here, which I think came out very nicely, versus having an edge, again, probably 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch up. So some of the pros and cons of custom installations versus a pre-cut installation. The first and most obvious con to the custom install is the cost and the time. So we charge quite a bit more per panel, depending on the panel, typically more complex bumpers where we have a lot more labor and material time into it. We charge quite a bit more for it. So if you are price conscious, or say it's a track driven vehicle where you're pretty confident that the film is going to get beat up frequently and need replacing frequently, the custom install is probably not the best route. You probably want to go with a quality pre-cut installation, which we do here all the time. If you are someone who is wanting to really capture the aesthetic of the vehicle, maybe it's a weekend car, nice day only car, or even a daily driver, and you're someone who's particular about these minor details such as exposed edges and seams, the custom install is probably going to be better for you. It's not to say you cannot do a quality pre-cut installation. We do them all the time. It's just the minor details and differences between the two. So depending on the panel, sometimes bulking can put more or less tension in certain areas of the film. On this particular bumper, I felt that it actually placed a little less tension, especially in the areas down here where I was able to make my cuts and then feed the film in. It's not as tight in those areas, so I feel like there is a lower chance of it possibly failing or popping up and having to come back. That's not always the case. There are times where we have to explain to the client that If they want a certain panel in one piece, depending on that panel, it may put more tension on the film to do a custom installation versus a pre-cut where there's multiple pieces. And in that case, there is a chance that no matter how hard we try, no matter how well we prep, sometimes putting that much tension on the film can result in a corner popping up or the film failing in a certain area, thus warranting a redo. So it really comes down to a couple of factors, primarily your budget and your goals with the film. Is it to get it as perfect looking as possible, which there is no such thing as a perfect film installation, it just does not exist. But with the custom route, you can certainly push the limits and really get it as clean as possible. Or is your goal purely to protect the vehicle and keep rock chips and scratches off of it? If that is the case, then a quality pre-cut installation is probably the best route for you. So I'll give you guys one more look over here of all the edges up close to really give you guys an idea of how clean we were able to make this installation. Now that we have the vehicle on the ground and the wipers up, I'm going to show you guys how to apply Nova Glass. The first step is to make sure the glass is fully decontaminated, which we covered in the first part of this video series using NV Snow, NV Purify, and the KLIN Clay Mitt to clean the glass, get it nice and smooth. Any bonded contamination has been removed. The second step is going to be to use NV Clarity. This is their streak-free cleaner. It's going to get any residues, polishing oil, anything off of the surface to give you a very clean surface for the coating to adhere to. To use it, you simply spray directly on the surface. I like to spray a little bit into the towel as well. This is a KLIN Glass Shine. It's a great towel for cleaning glass. You're simply just going to clean the glass. Make sure there's no residue left on there. Clarity and the Glass Shine work very well as a maintenance glass cleaner as well. It's obviously paint safe, so not worried. I got a little bit of overspray here on the car. So I just want to make sure I'm getting edge-to-edge coverage with the cleaner and the towel. Not missing any spots. The next step is going to be to take the NV glass, remove it from the packaging. Comes with a suede applicator and a foam block. Michael has already coated the side and rear glass, so I'm just going to show you guys how to do the windshield, but it does come with multiple suedes if you're doing more than just the windshield, or if you're doing multiple applications. The bottle is 20 milliliters, but don't let this deceive you. A little bit of this goes a very long ways. You should be able to get a couple of cars, front, side, and rear glass out of this one bottle. And I like to go down the middle, like so, and up and down. Spread and get even coverage. Go edge to edge. If you do happen to mistakenly get some on the trim or the paint, don't worry. Just immediately wipe it away. Even if you do happen to graze over and you notice it later, it will wipe off easily. It's not the end of the world. Same process for the driver's side. Put one line down the middle. Go up and down, spreading that initial line up and down, covering the glass evenly. One thing I have not done today that I typically recommend for DIY application, people at home doing this, is to clean the inside of the windshield very well before you coat the glass. This way, when you're going to remove the glass coating, you're not confused as to whether it's a residual amount of coating or is it a streak on the inside of the glass. So it just helps you make sure that your removal process is as least stressful as possible. So that's it. I'm just gonna let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. And once it's fully set, I will use a removal towel to take it off. Now that I've let the coating sit for 5 minutes, I'm going to use a zero finish towel to remove the coating. This is a fairly small windshield, so I can get by using one towel. Typically what I'll recommend on larger pieces of glass, such as SUVs, to use 2 towels when you remove. One to do the entire windshield first, and then a second towel to go back over just as an insurance policy to make sure you've removed it all. But what I'll do today is use one side of this towel and simply flip over to another side and wipe it off. It's a very forgiving coating. It's easy to apply and easy to remove. Obviously, prep is essential to that. So if you do not do a good job of prepping the glass, you will notice that it is gonna be grabby to remove. But since we've thoroughly prepped this glass, it's coming off quite easily. I recommend getting the towel as flat as you possibly can on the glass. The more bunched up it is, the more likely you are to not pick up all the coating, which is not ideal. It should be very obvious. Might be hard to pick up in the video, but the areas that have not been wiped off, you'll see a slight haze to them. As soon as you wipe it, that haze will go away. And then your second wipe is your insurance policy, just to make sure you got it all off. I can see some streaking here, but I'm confident that it's on the inside of the glass, so I'm not worried about it. I've removed all the windshield coating, and that is it. That's Nova Glass. Very simple, easy to use. Will provide anywhere from 6 to 12 months of protection for the front glass, depending on how often you use your wipers and just the general use of the vehicle. So it'll provide great hydrophobics and make driving in the rain much more enjoyable. So the next thing I'm gonna do, while the car is still on the ground, I'm gonna go ahead and go over MORPH. I've done one other video on this product. It's fairly straightforward to use. It's an all-in-one, so it has light to medium defect removal, and it also is a coating primer. So you can use this prior to Lustre, which we'll be using today. You can use it prior to Evo as well, their consumer grade coating. So it's a great time-saving product, especially on new vehicles like this one, where really we're just trying to lightly refine the paint. We're not looking to do any major correction. And it's also a great value to the client, just because we don't have to charge to polish and then apply an LSP. We can just use MORPH. And in this case, we are going to be putting Lustre on top, but if you wanted to, you could just use MORPH and get a solid 4 to 6 months of protection out of that alone. So I'm going to be using a Rupes Mark II 21 machine with the Detail Division Excel backing plate. This is version 2, if I'm not mistaken. I've actually not been using this machine as often lately because I was having some issues with the factory backing plate rubbing against the shroud, and it could very well be user error, could be doing something wrong, but for whatever reason, I was having that issue and it was causing the shroud here to kind of fragment out onto the car, and I was getting little pieces of rubber everywhere, which is obviously not ideal during a correction or polishing scenario. So one thing I initially noticed right out the gate when I put this backing plate on is that it is raised. It does not touch the shroud. So this does not have the Kevin Brown washer mod on it, but as you can see, even just putting this backing plate on it, it spins very freely, which is great. Ultimately, it has resolved the issue that I had with the backing plate rubbing, and it has also allowed me to use the machine on a lower speed while still keeping the pad spinning without stalling, which is great. I'm an advocate of not having to turn the machine speed up when it's not necessary, and so this backing plate has really made me start to use this machine a lot more again. So check out detaildivision.com if you're looking to get one. Scott's a great guy and he sells amazing products. So I'll be using a Geon Eccentric finishing pad today with this product. This one is stained blue because it is used. I've used it with Geon's polish and Geon's primer polish in the past. So as you can see, even though we've cleaned the pad, obviously, it has stained the white a little bit. This is how they look brand new. These are the 3-inch variants. This is their finishing pad. So it's the last step in their pad selection. And another great pad to use with MORPH is the blue polishing pad. It's a medium polishing pad. So here's a brand new one, 3-inch. Today we'll be using the white. So the way you use MORPH is very straightforward. As you can see, there's some smudge marks and a little bit of light marring. This color hides it very well, being that it's heavy metallic and gray, but there is a little bit of marring just from us handling the film when we did the custom installation on the front bumper. So as I've mentioned, we like to do the fenders last in this application, just so we're not repeating steps. So you want to make sure you shake the product well. I'm gonna apply, this bottle's getting low. Gonna apply 4 pretty large size drops here just to get the pad primed. Once the pad is primed and I've done my first pass, I find that I have to add maybe half as much just to keep it going. I obviously recommend between every single pass using a pad brush or compressed air or both, just to keep the paint residue out so you're not excessively marring the paint. But even with cleaning the pad out between passes, I find that I do not have to add this much polish every single time with this particular product. Just gonna work it onto the pad here so I don't sling polish all over our nice PPF here. This is a KLIN Plush Plus. I find that these are great for removing polish. They work very well for that use. So that was on speed 2. And you really just want to work the product until you see it start to haze over like this, which I did not do a very long pass just now. I could have definitely kept working it if I wanted to. But in this case, the paint is in fairly good condition. There were some water spots on various parts of the vehicle where we had to work the product a little bit longer. and or switch to the blue polishing pad. But in this instance, I'm just trying to get off any of the marring that we might have put in while installing the PPF. So the next step is very straightforward. You're gonna just wipe the product off. It's extremely easy to wipe off. One observation I've made with this product is the higher you turn up the speed on the machine, the harder it is to wipe the product off. This may seem obvious to some of the professionals out there. You know, you're obviously working down the lubricants in the product quicker, so it's gonna be dry buffing. But to some of the enthusiasts out there, just a word of advice, I would keep the machine speed down lower and work the product longer versus trying to turn the speed up and cut down defects quicker. So it's a very straightforward process. And now we are ready to apply Lustre. But what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna let the MORPH sit. They recommend letting it cure for about an hour before you apply any LSP on top of it. So what I'm gonna do is raise the vehicle and show you guys how to apply NV wheel, Nova wheel to the calipers. Okay, so now that I have the wheel off, I'm gonna repeat the same initial step that I took with Nova Glass. Obviously these calipers are brand new. They've just been finished in this Porsche Lizard Green, so there is no need to use purge or purify or to clay or polish or anything like that. If the car has been driven and there are miles on it and you can feel contamination after washing and using purify, you're gonna wanna clay and then machine polish before you use clarity to ensure that the coating has a surface that it'll adhere to. But in this case, these are freshly refinished, they've cured from paint, so we're just gonna go straight to clarity and then to Nova wheel. Nova wheel comes in the same packaging as Nova Glass. It's a 20 milliliter bottle with a foam block and suede applicators, and it is applied the same way as Nova Glass. You're gonna apply it to the suede towel and then apply it to the surface evenly. Okay, so now that I have performed the clarity step of getting any residue off the caliper, my next step is going to be to apply Nova wheel. Use it in the same fashion as Nova Glass. You're just gonna simply apply it to the suede on top of your foam block and get even coverage on the caliper. So it's the same process as Nova Glass. Now that I've applied it evenly to the entire caliper, I'm gonna wait 5 to 10 minutes before removing it. Now that I've waited about 5 minutes, I'm gonna simply wipe the coating off using another KLIN Zero Finish towel. We've ordered another type of KLIN towel that will be in stock soon. We've heard really great things about it for coating removal, so I'll do a review on those once they're in. I honestly hate having to use these Zero Finish because they're so nice, but they do a great job of removing the coating without leaving any marks behind or marring. So I simply wait until they're used quite a few times over many months and washed, and then I just take a clean one and use it for coating removal. Can soak it in warm water with American Detailer Garage F-Bomb as soon as you're done with this process, and then machine wash it once it's soaked for a while and reuse the towel for further coating removal jobs. I don't highly recommend doing that for paint, just because the nature of it, there's a good chance that if there's any coating left in the towel, it's gonna mark up the paint, which is not what you want after you've just done correction and applied a coating. But for more forgiving surfaces like standard alloy wheels, I think this is a perfectly acceptable practice, and in this case, we're doing it for a brake caliper. So that is it. That's the process for applying Nova Wheel to refinish calipers. Now that I've finished polishing this fender with MORPH, I'm going to apply Lustre high gloss spray coating. I've let this fender sit for about an hour, so the instructions recommend letting the MORPH dry before you apply Lustre. To apply Lustre is very simple. I'm just going to use a KLIN Plush Plus towel. Do 2 sprays into the towel and wipe it onto the fender. Since we've polished this with MORPH, there's actually not as much product required. Normally you would want to do, I'd say 3 or 4 sprays for a panel, but since it's already hydrophobic, we don't need that much for it to spread. This product goes very well over PPF as well, and when combined with MORPH will easily give you 6 to 8 months of protection. Once this is cured, I'll go over it with Nova Boost. This is their enhanced quick detailer. It's SiO2 based. It provides great beading. It's an amazing coating maintenance product. And in this case, we're going to be using it to top the Lustre before it leaves the shop. Now that Lustre has had time to set, I'm going to apply Boost. This is a very straightforward process, like any other quick detailer. Just want to spray it directly onto the paint. You can use this when the car is wet as a drying aid, or if you prefer, you can spray it directly into the towel and introduce it to the paint. Using a Plush Plus from KLIN to work the product onto the panel. I personally think it's probably the easiest quick detailer to use. If you're someone that has a jet black car, it does not have the tendency to streak like some quick detailers do. And it also does an amazing job of keeping a coating topped up and protected. You can use it after every single wash, or you can use it, say you've washed the car on a Friday, it's sat in your garage overnight and it just has a light layer of dust on it. Before you go to the car show or what have you, you can wipe the car down, dust it off. It has enough lubricity that it's not going to scratch the paint. So, recap, we used MORPH to polish the panel. We used Lustre to apply spray coating to the panel to add more protection and gloss. And then we topped it with Nova Boost. So some final thoughts and just a brief recap before I end the video. Custom installation versus modified pre-cut. The biggest con with a custom installation is going to be the price and the time that's required to complete this. If you are strictly just looking for the protection aspect of things, a quality pre-cut installation is probably going to be your best bet. It's not going to be as big of an ordeal or a cost factor when you go to replace it. If you are someone who is very particular about your paint protection film and you are looking to really capture the aesthetic of the vehicle and eliminate as many exposed edges as possible, the custom installation is going to be your best route. In the case of this client, he requested a one-piece bumper, and there was no way of doing this with modified pre-cuts. It would have been 3 pieces, and so we had to use one bulk sheet of film to wrap the entire bumper. If it were modified pre-cut, we would still be able to wrap quite a few edges, such as into the fender liner here, even into these reflector areas here. And we would have been able to eliminate some things like the parking sensors and the tow hook cover and cut those by hand, but we would have not been able to make it one solid piece like we've done here. So if those minor details are important to you, the custom install is definitely going to be your best route. It's not to say that you can't do a great job installing a modified pre-cut. We do that here all the time in our shop, but I just wanted to share with you guys some of the up-close details and differences between the two. Thanks.